fans, welcome to Sports Chat this week. Kind of a slow week in sports. The weather has put a damper on a lot of sporting events, and of course, the Pro Bowl was this week. There's no football, just a little bit of basketball.
Yeah, the Cougars had their games cold and snowed out all week. I think they lost 3 games. They're making one of them up right now against Fulton. Maybe they'll get to play tomorrow, maybe not. Well, by the time you see this, maybe you'll know where they already played. But regardless,
They go to Oak Ridge tomorrow.
Cougars didn't get much action in this week due to the weather. Middle school tournament went on. I believe that Jacksboro won on Saturday.
Jacksboro won on Saturday.
So they're playing tonight down in Robertsville. Hopefully Cody Parker can get them on a hot streak. And
Cody seems to always have them going once playoff time gets here.
I'm not sure we'll follow it.
I've not heard a score on that one.
Hopefully we'll follow it. I'd love to see the two of them meet in the finals if that's possible in the tournament.
It's very possible. I know the first year of the Times had come back, we were a few points away from Jacksboro and La Follette meeting for the East Tennessee title.
Well, it's a good basketball tradition here in the local area. But when they get to play and it's not 5 below 0 or snowing, which is, of course, as we all know, has happened a lot the past week.
And school board policy, it is a long-standing policy. No matter what, if they've called school off, there's not going to be a game.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense if the conditions aren't warranted for kids to be out at school. They're probably not warranted to be out for a game. And the last game we did have, Central, it got pretty snowy during the course of the game and made for tricky travel home for a lot of people. So it's been a tough winter on the basketball because, all the school delays. But it's coming along. Hopefully the Cougars can beat Fulton tonight. Fulton's a very good team.
Jody Wright is just one of the best coaches in East Tennessee, period. And, he's from Carrollville. He literally was born a quarter of a mile from me, if that.
On the football side of things, of course, as he mentioned, the Pro Bowl happened this past week. Apparently Jerry Rice's team defeated Deion Sanders' team, which I find that to be terrible because Jerry Rice is one of those most awful jackals who ever strapped it on in the NFL. I don't like you, Jerry Rice. Play for the 49ers. I can't like anybody for the 49ers. But the big game, of course, this weekend. Right now, it's supposed to be in the upper 30s. Mostly cloudy skies, the last forecast I saw, so they're probably not going to have to move the game to Saturday like they were speaking of or delay it. I don't think weather will be a factor. Denver plays in pretty cold conditions most of the time. I'm not sure. There's been a lot of stories why Peyton Manning can't play in the cold. I don't understand that. He pretty much played a game in Denver earlier this year. I think the air temperature was about 3 degrees and it was windy. And Denver lit up the scoreboard like they have against everybody this year. Seattle probably doesn't play in quite a cold conditions, upper 30s, low 40s. Doesn't really get that cold in Seattle most of the time, so that should be about right at home for them. So hopefully there's no precipitation falling. If you're going to see two good teams play, I would rather them just play in pretty neutral conditions where, the game's decided by the players on the field, not whether a player happened to hit a mud hole and slip down.
Right, and that's the one thing. I'm not going to say I'm necessarily opposed to the Super Bowl being in New Jersey. I don't know. I'm just used to the Super Bowl being played where the conditions aren't necessarily going to be an issue.
For years, they would not allow Dallas to host the Super Bowl because Dallas had a hole in the stadium roof. And until Dallas got the retractable dome, they weren't able to host the Super Bowl. And apparently, there's a story out. I'm not sure how much validity is. Probably is some because the Super Bowl is in New York. That apparently some billionaire, in his attempt to get the Olympics into Russia, apparently it's a Russian billionaire, something along those lines, somehow gave the NFL quite a bit of money to have the Super Bowl in New York. And I think New York may have been going to try for some Olympics or something around New York. And I don't know, it worked out some strange way. Apparently there's supposed to be some kickback toward Roger Goodell for some of the stuff I've reading from a Russian billionaire. And it's all tied in with the Russian, because there's a constant scandal with the Olympics and where they end up located.
Right. I mean, the International Olympic Committee may be the dirtiest organization in sports.
And I think that maybe that also may have shut Chicago out of hosting some Olympic games, but I think Chicago may have gotten some summer games pretty soon, though. But it's a strange deal. The Super Bowl is always been played in warm weather or in a dome. It makes it easier for the fans to see it. That's a big thing. I mean, the football players can go out and play. But like the terrible Jackals from Green Bay who had trouble earlier with selling their ticket allotment when it was really cold. You don't want to pay $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 for a ticket.
And freeze.
Have to go and sit in freezing weather, freezing rain, whatever it's going to be. That's just not something I want to do as if I'm going to put that much money down on the Super Bowl. New York's a logistical nightmare for travel for the most part, and I can only imagine how it's going to be in the Super Bowl time. I mean, technically the Super Bowl's in New Jersey though, but still, I'm sure the traffic in the New Jersey area is bad as well.
That's just New York light.
It's just, I don't know. I would have chosen somewhere else. You would think, I'm sure the players would vote for Miami or the desert Southwest, San Diego.
Somewhere with a dome.
Or in a dome, but
I mean, even Indianapolis or Dallas or
Indianapolis just hosted it. Dallas just hosted it in the last few years.
maybe even at the Hubert H. Humphrey Metrodome.
Detroit tried to. I don't think the Metrodome isn't going to be used anymore. They're blowing that place up. Minnesota's going to have to play outside for a couple of years like they used to back in the 70s. That was the snowiest,
Well, that should be terrible
and
for the Minnesota
coldest
fans.
place to play. There was a foot of snow on the ground constantly during Minnesota games back in the 70s. We had the purple people eaters going. But they'll be back. They have to play outdoors for a couple of years. Hopefully they go 0-16 a couple of times. But I think Detroit tried to get the Super Bowl, hosted in the Ford Silverdome that they have.
Whatever it's called now.
It's the Ford something arena, but it's a big indoor facility. Atlanta had it a few years ago, but it usually rotates between those southern cities like that. Houston, Southern California, where the Cardinals play, and then of course along the Florida area and the Georgia Dome. No point in really having it up north. Even if they get away with it this time and weather's not a factor, it eventually will be if they keep hosting it in northern venues. And I say, you don't want weather to decide the game. You want the players on the field to decide it. And I know playing in weather is part of it, but some teams, and it's not that big of a deal because it's Denver and Seattle. Now, if New Orleans had made the Super Bowl, or, by some miracle Tampa Bay makes the Super Bowl, those are teams that don't build their team to play in cold weather because they spend almost all the season playing in extremely hot weather, or controlled in the Superdome's case, but they do terribly in cold weather. So if you're playing some cold weather team and because suddenly it's a big advantage swinging your way. You get outside in Miami this time of year, it's 70 degrees. Everybody can be comfortable with that. Fans, players, games decided on the field. It almost never rains in South Florida or in the Southwest this time of year.
Oh yeah, another big thing about the Super Bowl is, they talk about, we may have to move it. Well, what does that do? I mean, the Super Bowl's a ratings bonanza.
Oh yeah.
Everybody watches the Super Bowl, even those jackals that just watch it for the terrible commercials. What happens if, these people that plan these massive parties, what happens when you shift it to Saturday?
Well, I guess you better hope the big sandwich arrives a day early and you can make your changes.
It's just like, I know when I worked at Papa John's, it was one of the big, every driver worked. Every driver worked. Because it was such a big day. And they didn't have anything as good as this bacon cheeseburger pizza we had tonight.
Man, come down to Papa John's and get one of those because they will hook you up. It's fantastic, the cheeseburger pizza.
It's the best non-traditional pizza I've ever had. It's among the best pizzas I've ever had.
Great Super Bowl food, but it becomes a logistics nightmare for businesses and everybody at that point. I don't think they're going to have to cancel it this time, but how much lead time do you need? I'm sure that all the local Papa John's have a bunch of people scheduled to work on Sunday, thinking they're going to get the Super Bowl rush. If the day before it's going to happen, they change it to Saturday, you got to change around a bunch of schedules. People may have plans. It's just a nightmare that could have, let's just play this down south where we usually play it or out west, and it's fine. No weather, no worries.
On a basketball front, of course, UT lost badly to Florida. And I hate them, but Florida's a top-rated team, better rated than Kentucky this year. But it's a Florida team that we almost always beat.
I mean, I can understand losing, going down there and laying down and just getting steamrolled by 30 is not acceptable. This team's got a lot on the line, a lot to play for right now. And you go down and just lay down and take a beating like that. And Martin stands over there looking like a deer in the headlights. He reminds me of Wade Houston or Buzz Peterson. It's just, he looks like he's lost most of the time. He doesn't, use timeouts in good fashion, never seems to get excited or get in players' faces. My God, I watched a video that someone posted on one of the UT Sports message board of Bruce Pearl a few years ago. God, it makes me even sadder to see something like that. But barring some kind of miracle, it's going to take almost a miracle for Tennessee. I just don't see the light suddenly turning on for the team at this point in the year. It's late in January. The February is your stretch run to get you ready for the NCAA tournament. Got a bunch of games, a bunch of tough conference games. Tennessee has 12 games left, all against the conference. They realistically probably have to go 10-2 in those 12 games to put themselves in the NCAA tournament.
Or actually pull out the biggest upset of all time and win the SEC tournament.
We've not won that since 1979. Coach Pearl's got us to the finals a couple of times, but that's as close as we can get to that thing. I have no faith that we're going to win the SEC tournament. So I'm just counting on. You're going to have to go 10-2. 10-2 puts you in the eyes of the NCAA tournament committee at 21-9. Tennessee did not make it at 21-10 last year. So that's going to put you on the borderline. I think 10-2 probably would this year. It will probably garner Tennessee somewhere between a 9 and an 11 seed in that range. That's about as low a seed as you can get. The 11 seed is it's a very low seed that you can get for an at-large berth. Most of those anything below 11 goes to the automatic qualifier conferences for the most part. Or if a really bad team, like I think Georgia got on a hot streak and won the SEC tournament a few years ago. They were 13-17 coming into it, and I believe they got a 12 seed. But it's just for those freak tournament winners and the small tournament winners. So 11's about as bad as you can be and still get in as an at-large. And Tennessee's right in that range. If they go 9-3, it'll be close. They'd probably have to win some games in the SEC tournament. Although the guy from the selection committee said they don't really look that closely at how you do in the tournament. They mostly use your regular season resume. You go out and go 8-4, you got to win the SEC tournament. You go out and go 7-5, you got to win the SEC tournament. Anything worse than 9-3, I think you have to win the SEC tournament to get in. Because the Tuscaloosa game doesn't count. We're 12-7 right now. That doesn't count. You're 11-7 in the eyes of the NCAA. And for this team that was picked to finish third in the East, or third in the SEC, pardon me, there is no East and West anymore. It's predicted as a borderline top 25 team. If you're in the top 25, that puts you on basically, there's 4 pods, 4 times, 8, that's 24, so you're basically looking at a 4 seed-ish, 5 seed, 6 seed, somewhere in the 4 to 6 range for your seeding as a top 25 team. Borderline. That's where Tennessee was probably projected to go. Most people, the lowest I think I saw in the preseason was a 7 seed after the season was over. And they're just in it for their tournament life right now, having to have a great run down the stretch to try to get to the bubble and hope they get picked.
And and as we learned last year, it doesn't matter if you make the NIT. The NIT's meaningless.
Oh, the NIT. I mean, the only thing that can come out of the NIT is bad. A bad loss is the only thing you get out of the NIT. There's no good wins in it. Winning the NIT doesn't matter. It's redundant and ridiculous. And it's even worse than going to like the 5 and the 6 and 6 bowl. At least in the 6 and 6 bowl, you get a month of extra practice to try to make your team better. In the NIT, you get maybe 2 weeks of extra practice if you win it, and then nobody cares because it's the NIT. It's meaningless. It does nothing for you. NIT, I can't imagine Cuonzone Martin would get to keep his job. If he scrapes into the NCAA tournament, he may get to keep it, and it's going to be a disaster. You look at this past week against Florida, Tennessee scored 51 points. Maimon and Stokes, I want to say, had 25 of those points. Something along those lines, maybe 30, close to 30 of those points. Almost all the made baskets Tennessee had in the game were Maimon and Stokes. They're gone next year.
As is
Jordan McRae, who he had a bad game against Florida because they double-teamed him every time he got around the ball. And that's all Florida did. They throw the ball to Stokes or McRae, and they ran 2 people at them constantly. The whole game. And Martin was like, oh, my gosh, they're going to run 2 people at him. I don't know what to do. And so we just didn't score. But they're gone. You're going to replace them with a bunch of freshmen who are decent recruits. A guy like Coach Pearl could probably go out and win 20, 25 games with those recruits. Cuonzone Martin is playing with top 50 recruits in Stokes and McCray, and Lehman was a top 50, top 60 kind of recruit. He's getting nothing out of it. He's going to struggle to maybe make the NCAA with it. His recruits aren't good. His recruits can't score. His recruits scored pretty much nothing in this last game. I mean, you can say that Jarnell Stokes is technically his recruit, but Bruce Pearl pretty much had everything but Jarnell's name on the paper when he left here. Jarnell has family at UT and loved UT. So he was coming here, plus his unique graduation circumstances.
And we were one of, what, 2 schools that
We
he
were just
could have?
one of 2 or 3 schools he could even get in. His other choices were Florida and Memphis, neither of which had a scholarship open at the time to give him. So he kind of pretty much had to go to Tennessee or just not play basketball for the rest of his senior year because he couldn't play at his Memphis area school because of a transfer rule. But next year it's looking desolate. Even if you make the NCAA tournament, it may be a bad thing if Martin comes back. And you know, it's a roll of the dice getting the new coach, and we may not have a good year next year regardless, because the new coach will have, you know, the lack of talent that we're going to have next year all of a sudden. When your top 3, I figured up it's 70% of the offense is gone. And that's assuming Stokes goes to the NBA. I can't imagine him staying another year.
He's getting a double-double every game just
He
about.
went out, he dominated against Kentucky, put up 20 and 15 against them, dominated against Florida. He was the only one that played good against Florida. But he's playing well. He may not make the NBA, because the NBA is tough to make with their 2 rounds of draft, but he can go and make a lot of money playing somewhere.
Oh, you can go to Europe and make a good living playing ball. That's what, oh gosh, what's his name? Played it under Pearl, black guy.
That narrowed it right down.
Okay, anyway, Scotty
Hobson, Wayne
yeah.
Chesson. A bunch of players do that. You can make $100,000 or more a year doing it. If you get with the right team, you can make a couple of hundred, $300,000 or $400,000 a year. That's a good living to make. You get your expenses paid. You get to live in Europe, make hundreds of thousands of dollars to play basketball. That's pretty good stuff. Now, I'm not sure if Stokes would do that or not, but there's a good shot that he would. I don't know what coming back to Tennessee would do him any good at all, especially if
it's going to be a
back.
Martin. Just and next year's going to be awful.
So you just have to assume that Stokes will be gone, and it's just, if you're going to have to fire Martin next year, why not fire him this year? That's the way I look at it. I don't see how you're going to avoid it, because next year, regardless of what happens in the NCAA, I can't imagine winning more than 15 or 16 games. He might win 20. He might schedule enough bad teams to win 20. But the end result is going to be the NIT tournament at best, probably. And this is Martin's 6 years as head coach. Still no tournaments. Looking like he's not going to make it this year. I'm over it. Most Tennessee fans are over it. Bring back Bruce Pearl's page. It's up to 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 likes on Facebook. You should probably Google it or look it up on Facebook and like it yourself. Fans clamor for him. I don't think he'll ever come back. I don't know if he'd take the job back at this point because of, apparently he thinks they slighted him quite a bit according to Stephen Pearl and some other stuff.
Pretty much as long as Jimmy Cheek is there.
And they pretty much did a big disservice to Coach Pearl.
Now, if you think Steven talking about it's bad, I ought to hear Jackie talk about it. Steven's at least nice about it because he's a radio personality. I've known Jackie for a while. She's just an angry female when it comes to it.
None of them particularly like it very much at all. And I couldn't blame him for not coming back into the NBA. He's going to get a job somewhere, and it's going to be spectacular for them.
Unfortunately, I'm hearing he may wind up in Alabama.
That would just be the worst thing I've ever seen. Bad enough if he ends up at Georgia, let alone Alabama. It'd be hard to watch him in the league, playing for somebody else. I think it's ridiculous if Tennessee would entertain it. Just the sheer amount of extra money. They made an extra $6, $7, $8 million a year out of the basketball program when he was there.
And you can tell he still loves UT.
And
If
I
you
don't
heard
know
his interview about Pat Summitt this week.
why he wouldn't, UT should just be like, listen, NCAA, investigate away whatever you want to, take a dive. We don't care. That's pretty much what Miami did, and Frank Haith committed just violations of epic proportions. I mean, I say he was sending money to boosters to pay them back for all the wild stripper parties they were buying his recruits. Hundreds of thousands of dollars he was using out of the athletic fund. He lied to the NCAA about it 3 times. The NCAA knew that he lied about it and said Frank Haith lied to us. Frank Haith got a 5-game suspension. And the reason being, apparently the NCAA used some illegal methods of getting information out of his personal checking account. So they capitulated and backed down when they stood up to him and gave him just a small slap on the wrist. Mike Slive, who suspended Bruce Pearl 8 games for his bump violation, which didn't occur. That didn't happen. Pearl said it didn't happen. The player said it didn't happen. The NCAA in their final report said it didn't happen. It didn't matter. Mike Slive stepped in and suspended Pearl for the first 8 SEC games for that supposed bump violation. UT administration didn't stick up for him, didn't stand by him. They bent right over and took it on. And then they fired him. So I couldn't blame Pearl for not coming back, but I will blame Dave Hart and Jimmy Cheek and all of them if they don't go to Pearl and say, please come back. Here's $3 million.
At least
Please
try.
come back. You got to do that.
Make him turn you down.
I mean, I don't think they will because they're too prideful. But I don't see why you wouldn't from a business point of view, just for the sheer volume of money that you're going to make. And Pearl's not, it was not like Pearl was out paying players or doing any of the stuff Frank Haith was doing. He had a barbecue, which was legal now. And then lied about having the barbecue, which was not the smartest thing to do, but every coach who's ever had NCAA violations lies about it. Some of them they catch, some of them they don't. They caught Frank Haith, did nothing to him. If anybody thinks Jim Calhoun didn't know what was going on in his program and they blamed it all on the assistant and said Calhoun didn't know about it, you know better than that. So people who win national championships in 500 or 600 games, they don't do it by not knowing what's going on in their program. They know exactly what's going on. John Calipari has lied. He's made a career of lying. Every place he leaves, wreckage.
UMass has never recovered from him.
UMass has never recovered. Memphis has got a lot of good talent, and it's still not very good. But I mean, they all get wiped out by the NCAA. Calipari knows how to build a way around it. He can tell some lies, say he didn't know anything. There was other people doing all this, and that's fine. I mean, Derrick Rose situation. Derrick Rose didn't take his own ACT. Someone in Detroit, I mean, he's from Chicago, someone in Detroit took the ACT, submitted it as Derrick Rose, it passed. Now, who lives in Detroit? William Wesley, Calipari's best friend and the #1 guy who sends all these recruits to Calipari. So some random guy that happened to be in the hometown of
Calipari's right hand.
Calipari's man that gets him all those recruits. Somehow the ACT is taken in Derrick Rose's name, and it just happens to land Calipari a great recruit. But apparently neither William Wesley nor Calipari knew anything about it. William Wesley gets to continue being around all these basketball programs, or all the Kentucky program. Calipari gets nothing. Memphis, who actually didn't know anything about it, the administration, gets all their wins stripped for 4 years, gets put on probation, and all the disaster. It's just like Mark Canby was taking money and from agents and everything, and Calipari did nothing about it. If the building keeps burning down that you're living in, eventually you got to figure that you might be behind it. But he lied at this point. Everybody's lied to the NCAA that's ever been investigated, and they make an example of Pearl. Pearl should have sued them. They tried to do that with Jerry Tarkanian years ago. Jerry Tarkanian was doing some pretty dirty stuff.
God,
But they took away his ability to coach for a couple of years. He went to the NCAA and sued them went to court and sued them for like $4 million in lost revenue. They said knew it didn't have a case. They really technically don't have any legislative power to ban you from working in your chosen field. And the NCAA settled and gave Tarkanian $2.5 million of that $4 million he was asking for. They folded immediately. They didn't want to go to court because they knew it would strip all their power.
all of these athletic, the NCAA, the TSSAA, it's all crap. They're all out of control, money hungry. Look at the Penn State situation. Why the NCAA? Bad situation. But why was the NCAA's business at all?
It was none of their business, and they violated all of their own rules in putting those sanctions on. They had no standing or no rules. Penn State violated no NCAA rules, but still got sanctioned as if they did. That matter was to be settled in criminal and civil court, which is settled in criminal court. Sandusky's in prison.
Joe Pa's dead.
Joe Pa's dead, which can't really do anything to him, and the rest of it we settle in civil court, where Penn State is very likely to lose millions of dollars to those people. That's who controls that. That's who should have. The NCAA had no business, which they've reduced a bunch of their penalties for it. They probably should have taken them away completely because it's nothing to them. Penn State's going to pay a heavy financial toll for that outside of the football program. It had nothing to do with it. It just hurt the players who were playing there. That's all it hurt. And those players did nothing. And the coaching staff, the new coaching staff, did nothing. The people who did nothing are the ones that got penalized for it. That's the NCAA's logic. They take me off. And I said, people said, well, they'll be all in Knoxville if you bring Bruce Pearl back. I wouldn't care.
Right.
Let them be in Knoxville. You know what? Bruce Pearl's the most popular coach that's coached over there in years. There would be parades. People, you could not make it, UT alumni, the students, you couldn't make anybody any happier if you brought Bruce Pearl back. And that's just the way it is. They may not like to hear that. He's more popular than everybody in that athletic department. I would take it back tomorrow, and if they fired the rest of the people in the athletic department, I wouldn't care.
Yeah, I mean, why Jimmy Cheek and Dave Hart are even allowed to be part of the UT system?
That's what I don't understand either. Other schools, for the most part, have alumni in those positions. Do you think Alabama's going to have a Tennessee graduate running their athletic program or their school? That doesn't happen at Alabama. Alabama uses Alabama grad. I can't believe there's not a qualified UT alumni in the last 40 years. I mean, that's all that used to run UT athletics for years were UT alumni. And then UT got off that track when they hired Doug Dickey. Now, I'll say this. Doug Dickey was good at his job.
That stuff that happened with Pearl wouldn't have went down under Doug Dickey with the NCAA.
No, he was good at deflecting the NCAA and standing by his coaches. But this administration's like, yep, you're done. We'll see you. And they did it. Many people say that to cover up the Kiffin thing as a compromise on the Kiffin thing. The football's bad anyway. You had Derek Dooley as a coach. I'd rather football take it on the chin. It's not like in football. What's football going to do? Go 4-7 instead of 5-6, or 6-6, 5-6. It's not like football wasn't bad anyway. It's the same now. I mean, my God, we could have kept Bruce Pearl on show calls, and it wouldn't have been any worse. I mean, if you're not going to make the NCAA tournament, your season was pretty much a bust anyway. The only good thing that's happened in basketball in 3 years is that blowout win over Kentucky.
Which would have happened under Pearl most likely.
But, I mean, even Pearl, just Pearl as the bench coach and the practice coach, even if he wasn't recruiting, I would have taken that over what we've got. I can't imagine his recruits would be any worse than the ones Cuonzone assigned.
We've still got Stokes.
Still would have gotten Stokes. Bruce wouldn't have been able to recruit off campus, and his show calls will be ending this year. I would rather have had 3 years under Pearl where we were on probation and under all that scrutiny, and may have been a bad team than just being a bad team under Martin, because at least with Pearl, I know there'd be hope as soon as his show calls ended and he could go recruit. If it had gotten down to this level. I don't think it would have gotten this low, and it's just, I don't know, I'm frustrated. I know I do this every week, but that's how frustrated I am. It's so entertaining to get to watch good Tennessee basketball in the winter, and now there's just none of that left.
On the upside in the UT thing, Coach Jones got another good recruit today.
I don't know how many people they're going to try to sign or how they're going to do it with the current NCAA rules, but apparently he's going to sign everybody. And just, I don't know. I guess he has some kind of magic, possibly a Sheeny curse of his own. But it's a great recruiting class. There's ample opportunity. We may be bad next year because we're probably going to be playing 25 freshmen by the way that's looking right now. But eventually I think Jones will get it there. Next year's recruiting class may have 12 people in it. But apparently he's found a way within NCAA rules, because frankly, you have to, because you just simply can't sign these people if it's not within NCAA rules. He's found a way within it to get them all here, and so pile them up, get them while you can.
Right. I mean, if they're willing to come and he's figured out a way to sign them, there's no real reason not to.
Well, that's one thing. You look at Tennessee, people can say what they want about being hard to recruit here. Derek Dooley.
Who was hated among Tennessee high school football coaches.
Most high school football coaches hate him. He didn't even try to recruit around the country. He tried to focus his recruiting on the Southeast. He, awful on the field results. Still signed top 25 classes every year he was here.
You know, the facilities at UT, I mean, my God, man, they're top notch.
Players want to play here. We have 5 players playing in the Super Bowls to most of any team. Players want to play here. They always have. Since the NFL draft started back in the 30s, Tennessee has the most players drafted in the NFL history. Good players play here. Good recruits come here. It's just a matter of getting someone to coach them and getting them in sync. And that's all it takes. And I think Jones is probably going to do that. I know he's certainly much better than Dooley, and probably a better coach than Kiffin, who is, of course, at Alabama now, making that game much more. You know, I couldn't hate Alabama any worse anyway, to be honest with you. I don't really particularly hate Kiffin, but like everybody else does. I focus more time. I hate him worse now because he's at Alabama. But I spent my focus hating Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, Auburn, Alabama.
Actually, the thing we should honestly hate Kiffin the most for is Derek Dooley.
Well, that's what the bad part is. I mean, that's more of a Mike Hamlin Board of Trustees thing, but, well, I blame the Board of Trustees. A lot of people blame Mike Hamilton for stuff. I don't think he had enough
I actually
control.
think if you're going to put blame at one person, it's Jimmy Cheek, not Mike Hamlin.
Well, I would say that it was Jimmy Haslam.
And I'll say this about Mike Hamilton. You know, it's easy to criticize. I'll give him the credit. He did step up and help improve our facilities.
Yeah, I mean, that's what got the athletic budget so stressed, because we went down in fortunes right when we were spending all that money on it in football. But I never believed that he had that much authority to hire anybody. People love to scapegoat him and blame him for everything. But it was the Board of Trustees who did the hiring and firing over there, and it always has been.
Nothing happens without Haslam's say so.
I can't imagine it's not that way at most every school. That they all have your big booster, that certain things aren't going to happen. Auburn has it the same way with that, I can't remember his name, the guy that owns all the banks down there. Alabama has it the same way. I'm sure if you look into Florida's finances, they're a big booster that has a lot of influence. But the Haslams are patient and like to fill the former for a long time. That's what got us in the spot we were in. But it's getting better on that front, getting worse on the basketball front. I hope somebody gets good eventually, though.
Right. And, you know, on the upside, too, we still have a lot of good Cougar basketball to look forward to with the tournament coming in. We got spring sports on the way, and, you know, it's going to be cold, but, you know, the sunlight's in sight.
Yeah, pretty good stuff coming up over the course of February. It's the grind of basketball season in district play and getting ready to start the tournaments. Hopefully Coach Browning and Coach Housley should have things ready to go by the time the tournament comes around.
I've talked to, not Coach Browning because he's busy, but Coach Miracle, the baseball coach, is probably going to come sit in with us next week, bring a player or two.
I look forward to that.
Probably have Caitlin from the softball team come in. We'll probably have some track athletes, some tennis athletes. We got a lot of good coming up.
Yeah, we'll try to get a lot of Cougar coaches and players down that participate in the spring sports over the next
And of course Shane with the soccer
couple
team.
months. Yeah.
We know Shane will come. We've had Shane on already.
It's an exciting time if we can get through the Arctic wasteland and get the sports back on schedule.
Well, fans, I think that about wraps it up for this evening. We'll see you next week to talk about baseball and the Super Bowl.